Islands have a funny way of rewriting the rules of evolution. Isolate a few species for long enough, and you end up with wildlife that looks like it came straight out of a sci-fi movie. Just look at Madagascar. Today, it's home to all kinds of bizarre creatures, like wide-eyed lemurs, eerie eyes, and the elusive fossa. Thanks to its remote habitats, Madagascar has been a playground for evolution, letting its animals develop in their own weird and wonderful directions, free from the usual crowd of mainland competition. But this isn't just something we see in modern times. It's a pattern that shows up over and over again in the fossil record. Millions of years ago, Madagascar wasn't just strange, it was downright terrifying. It was home to some of the most bizarre and deadliest creatures to ever walk the earth. Take Majungasaurus, for instance, a predator known to chow down on its own kind when food was scarce. Or Beelzebufo ampinga, a giant frog with a bite strong enough to snack on baby dinosaurs. But prehistoric Madagascar wasn't the only source of nightmare fuel back then. Far across the ancient seas was another wild place, Hateg Island, located in what's now Romania. Back in the Late Cretaceous, Europe wasn't a solid landmass like it is today. It was more like a tropical archipelago, kind of like modern-day Oceania. Nestled in this ancient chain of islands was Hateg Island, a landmass about the size of Austria, clocking in at around 80,000 square kilometers, or 30,889 square miles. The island was packed with the usual prehistoric suspects: dinosaurs, crocodiles, pterosaurs, and early mammals. But with a twist. The dinosaurs, miniaturized, the birds, massive, and the pterosaurs, they didn't just soar overhead, they snacked on the local dinosaurs. Throw in the fact that this lost world was first uncovered by an eccentric, possibly unhinged Hungarian baron, and you've got the perfect setting for one of evolution's strangest side stories. During the Maastrichtian stage of the Late Cretaceous, Hateg Island had a warm, subtropical climate, with average temperatures hovering between 20 and 25 degrees C, that's 68 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit. It went through noticeable wet and dry seasons, but even so, the island's plant life was mostly tropical. That might sound a bit contradictory. After all, carbon isotope data points to dry woodland conditions, which doesn't exactly scream tropical jungle. Still, many tropical plants today can handle seasonal dryness as long as they have reliable access to water throughout the year. Hateg Island seems to have had just that, with its landscape shaped by braided rivers and lakes that helped keep things green even during dry spells. Fossils of flowering plants and fruits, angiosperms, found in the region support this, suggesting a lush and diverse ecosystem. The island's older rock formations are packed with volcanic deposits, but as you move up through the layers, these volcanic traces fade out, a sign that volcanic activity was dying down during this time. If you thought the mighty Tyrannosaurus rex was terrifying on land, picture a beast just as fierce, but with wings soaring through the skies and capable of snatching up dinosaurs. This was Hatzegopteryx, the ultimate nightmare of Hateg Island. Hatzegopteryx, which literally means Hateg Basin Wing, was a colossal flying reptile that soared over what's now Transylvania during the Late Cretaceous. We only knew one species so far, Hatzegopteryx thambima, officially named in 2002 after paleontologists pieced together some skull and arm bone fragments. Later discoveries, including a hefty neck bone, revealed there were individuals of different sizes, with the largest boasting a wingspan between 10 and 12 meters, that's 33 to 39 feet, making it one of the absolute giants of the sky. But here's where Hatzegopteryx really flips the script. Unlike its more slender relatives, it had a broad, beefy skull with massive muscle attachments. Its bones weren't the typical hollow kind you'd expect. Instead, they had a spongy, reinforced layer, packing extra strength. Its neck was a powerhouse too, short, thick, and heavily muscled, at about 1.5 meters or 5 feet long, roughly half the length of necks in similar-sized pterosaurs. This wasn't some fragile flyer. It was built to handle serious force. Back in the day, with no large meat-eating dinosaurs to compete against, this giant pterosaur probably took the crown as the island's top predator, stalking and snatching up prey like dwarf titanosaurs and iguanodontians. In this world, it wasn't just big, it was downright terrifying. The first pterosaur fossils in Romania were spotted way back in 1899 by Franz Knüppe, but the bones we now call Hatzegopteryx were only uncovered during a student dig in the late 1970s in Transylvania's Hateg Basin. These fossils date to about 72 million years ago from the Late Cretaceous. The initial discovery included fragments of a massive skull and part of a wing bone, with one skull piece even mistaken for a theropod dinosaur at first. The first clue to just how massive Hatzegopteryx was came from a tiny fragment, just 236 millimeters, about 9.3 inches of its humerus bone. Scientists compared it to the humerus of Quetzalcoatlus northropi, which measures a whopping 544 millimeters or 21.4 inches. Since the Hatzegopteryx piece was less than half the full bone, researchers guessed its full humerus might have been even longer than Quetzalcoatlus. Back in the early 80s, Quetzalcoatlus was thought to have a wingspan between 11 and 12 meters, or 36 to 39 feet, although earlier wild estimates once soared as high as 15 to 20 meters, 49 to 66 feet. So, a 12-meter wingspan for Hatzegopteryx seemed like a safe, conservative bet, if its humerus truly was bigger. In 2010, paleontologists Mark Witton and Michael Habib re-examined the fossils and found earlier size estimates were inflated due to distortion. They concluded Hatzegopteryx was about the same size as Quetzalcoatlus, with a wingspan around 10 to 11 meters or 33 to 36 feet. There was a theory that its massive neck vertebra meant a bulkier body, but that's unlikely. Big pterosaurs naturally have wide neck bones. The skull of Hatzegopteryx was enormous, estimated to be around 2.5 meters or 8 feet 2 inches long based on comparisons with pterosaurs like Nyctosaurus, making it one of the largest non-marine reptile skulls ever known. The rear of the skull was broad, approximately 0.5 meters or 1 foot 8 inches, across at the quadrate bones. As I have mentioned before, unlike most pterosaurs, which had slender, delicate skull bones, Hatzegopteryx's skull was thick and robust, with prominent ridges indicating powerful muscle attachments. However, in 2018, paleontologist Matthias Vermeer proposed that the skull was likely shorter and broader than previously thought, estimating its length at about 1.6 meters or 5 feet 3 inches, and its wingspan at around 8 meters or 26 feet. Hatzegopteryx's massive jaw had its unique groove near the joint, something it shares with pterosaurs like Pteranodon, which basically meant it could open its mouth insanely wide. Plus, some unpublished fossils hint it rocked a short, deep beak, making it part of the blunt-beaked Asdarchids club, not the sleek, slender-beaked crew like Quetzalcoatlus lawsoni. That beak shape probably gave it some serious bite power and a different feeding style too. The humerus bone of Hatzegopteryx looked a lot like that of Quetzalcoatlus northropi. They both have a long, smooth ridge called the deltopectoral crest and a thick humeral head. At first, scientists thought they might even be the same species because of these similarities. But it turns out giant Asdarchid humerus bones aren't super unique, and since Quetzalcoatlus northropi's bones weren't fully described back then, the idea didn't stick. What really made Hatzegopteryx stand out is its neck and jaw, totally different from smaller cousins like Quetzalcoatlus lawsoni. That's why it's definitely its own beast. Its neck vertebra shows classic Asdarchid features, a low central part, big flat joints, and a split neural spine. Modern research places Hatzegopteryx deep in the Asdarchid family tree, sometimes alongside Quetzalcoatlus and Aramborgiania, or close to Albadraco, another pterosaur from its home in the Hateg Basin. Basically, it was one of the top flying predators of its era. Like all Azdarchid pterosaurs, Hatzegopteryx was probably a ground hunter that wasn't picky. It went after all kinds of prey. It was way bigger than any other land predator in Maastrichtian Europe, standing out in an ecosystem mostly filled with dwarf dinosaurs and no big meat-eating theropods. Because of that, it's thought to have been the top predator on Hateg Island. With its tough, bulky build, Hatzegopteryx could probably take down bigger prey than its cousins, maybe even animals too big to swallow whole. On the flip side, other giant Azdarchids like Aramborgiania likely stuck to smaller snacks, about human-sized or less, like baby dinos and eggs. In the dying days of the Cretaceous, a long-forgotten island adrift in the warm, shallow seas of prehistoric Europe, a particular predator stalked the underbrush. It wasn't a towering tyrannosaur or a lightning-fast raptor from the Great Plains of North America or Asia. This creature was something else entirely, an evolutionary anomaly forged not by abundance, but by constraint. Its name was Balor Bondok, and it was a beast shaped by isolation, power, and strange ingenuity. 70 million years ago, Romania wasn't a mainland. It was part of Hateg Island, marooned in the ancient Tethys Sea. Cut off from the continent, it became a laboratory of oddities, a world where evolution played by its own rules. Dinosaurs here shrank, adapted, and in some cases, like Balor, veered completely off script. At first glance, Balor looked like a typical raptor, maybe a cousin of Velociraptor, but look closer and the illusion breaks. This was no ordinary dromaeosaur. It was thick-limbed, low-slung, and powerfully built, about 2 meters long and 15 kilograms in weight. Not massive, but dense, compact, and loaded with muscle. And then there were the feet. Most raptors carried a single sickle claw on the second toe, a curved talon for precise strikes. Balor had 2, one on the first toe and another on the second. No other theropod shares this trait. Evolution, cornered by island constraints, seemed to say, why stop at one weapon when you can have 2? Its hands were no less strange. The third finger had nearly vanished, and its remaining digits were stocky and strong. Its limbs were heavily fused, wrists, ankles, and much of the foot locked together like a machine. This gave it strength and stability, but at the cost of flexibility. Balor didn't flit like a dancer. It planted itself like a brawler. When it was unearthed near Sebes in 2009, Balor threw paleontologists into debate. At first it was labeled a dromaeosaur, a stocky, insular cousin of the famous raptors, but some researchers saw something more radical, traits hinting at a flightless bird. The fused bones, reduced fingers, and unusual toes, hallmarks of avians, the group that includes modern birds. If that's true, Balor wasn't just strange, it was a primitive offshoot of the bird lineage that flirted with flight and gave up on it. Not a bird like today's ostriches, but something older, something that turned its back on the sky to rule the ground, a predator from a parallel path. But others push back. They argue Balor is still best placed among raptors, and that its bird-like traits evolved independently, a case of convergent evolution. Because evolution doesn't just march forward, sometimes, especially on islands like Hateg, it loops and twists. What we do know is this: Balor is an island oddity. Hateg was home to dwarf sauropods, turtle-like reptiles, and now a power-packed predator with double claws and bird-like limbs. While most island species shed weight and grew lean, Balor bulked up. It wasn't made for speed, it was made for force, less like a hawk, more like a kickboxer. Its exact role remains a mystery. Did it hunt slow-moving island herbivores, scavenge carrion, grapple prey into submission, or was it a grounded echo of a flying lineage, now lost to time? Whatever its story, Balor Bondok stands at a crossroads in evolution, a blur between bird and dinosaur, raptor and relic. It shows us what happens when nature is boxed in, when the world is small and survival demands invention. It's proof that evolution isn't always graceful, but it's always creative. Darko rises from the fading light of the age of dinosaurs, a medium-sized Asdarchid pterosaur that ruled the skies about 69 million years ago during the Maastrichtian stage of the Late Cretaceous. Its realm was no vast continent, but the isolated world of ancient Hateg Island in what is now Romania, a place known for its peculiar and diverse prehistoric life. Unearthed in 2009 by paleontologist Matthias Vremer within the Sebes Formation near Lancram, Darko's fossils reveal a tale of evolutionary finesse within this unique island ecosystem. Though the skull remains missing, the holotype specimen preserves neck vertebrae, wing bones, and finger elements, fragments of a creature both elegant and mysterious. Despite sharing its skies with the massive Hatzegopteryx, a giant among Asdarchids, Darko was not a juvenile of that towering behemoth. Its bones bear the unmistakable marks of maturity, a fully grown predator in its own right. With an estimated wingspan of around 3 meters, Darko was modest compared to some of its relatives, but still a skilled flyer. Its neck vertebrae display unique features, elongated joint processes angled outward, and unusually shaped cervical bones that distinguish it as a genus of its own. Darko's taxonomic position has been debated. Initially placed within the Asdarchidae family, later studies shifted it around, some grouping it in the Quetzalcoatlinae subfamily, others positioning it more basally with genera like Phosphatodraco and Welnopterus. This reflects the complexity of Asdarchid evolution. The Sebes Formation, rich with terrestrial fauna like the dwarf Titanosaurus, Talmatosaurus, and Magyarosaurus, suggest Darko was no fish-eater but a ground stalker. Its long legs and neck fit the super stork hunting model, prowling the land for small prey. If it truly shared its island with Hatzegopteryx, this signals an ecological balance, two Asdarchids, one giant, one mid-sized, dividing the landscapes in a final prehistoric dance of survival. Allodaposuchus was a genus of crocodiliform reptiles that lived in southern Europe during the Late Cretaceous, roughly between the Santonian and Maastrichtian stages. Its fossils have been found across Romania, including the famous Hateg Island ecosystem, as well as Spain and France, making it one of the most common crocodiliforms of its time. While usually seen as a non-crocodilian Eusuchian, some studies suggest it may be one of the earliest true crocodilians. Relatively small compared to modern crocodiles, the largest individuals reached about 3 meters or 10 feet long. Its skull was generally short and rounded, varying between species. Allodaposuchus praesidens had a short snout, while Allodaposuchus subjuniparus had a longer one. A key trait of Allodaposuchus is the unique cranio-quadrate passage visible from the skull's side, unlike in related species. One species, Allodaposuchus hulki, showed adaptations for a more terrestrial lifestyle, including large skull sinuses possibly aiding hearing out of water and strong forelimb muscles for semi-erect walking. Fossils of A. hulki come from floodplain deposits, suggesting it traveled between temporary ponds on land. Named by Franz Nopska in 1928, Allodaposuchus praesidens fossils from Hateg Island and other parts of Europe indicate the species lasted around 5 billion years. Taxonomic debates continue, but a new type specimen was designated in 2020 to help clarify its classification. Allodaposuchus belongs to Allodaposuchidae, a family whose exact evolutionary relationship to modern crocodilians remains uncertain, reflecting the complex crocodiliform diversity of the Late Cretaceous. Zalmoxes was a pretty cool little dinosaur from the Late Cretaceous about 70 million years ago, living on what's now called Hateg Island in Romania. It belongs to a group called rhabdodontids, basically small to medium-sized plant eaters. The story of its name is kind of interesting. It was first discovered way back in 1899 and called Mochlodon robustum by a paleontologist named Franz Nopska. Over the years, scientists changed its name a few times until in 2003, it finally got the name Zalmoxes, after an ancient Dacian god named Zalmoxis. The species name Robustus just means it was pretty sturdy built. That same year, another species was named, Zalmoxes schipororum, named after Albanians because of Knüppe's connection to the area. Zalmoxes was a small bipedal herbivore with a triangular head and a beak, kind of like a tiny, tough little dinosaur. The bigger species grew up to about 2.5 meters, around 8 feet, while Zalmoxes robustus was similar in size but a bit lighter, weighing about 45 kilograms, around 100 pounds. There's also evidence of an even bigger species reaching almost 3 meters or 9.5 feet. People used to think Zalmoxes was small because it shrank on its island home, a process called island dwarfism, but newer studies suggest it was actually close to the original size of its group, with some relatives getting bigger or smaller. One interesting thing about Zalmoxes is it grew pretty slowly and took a long time to reach full size, which is kind of unusual for dinosaurs. We know a lot about its skull and bones, although many fossils are found as isolated pieces rather than complete skeletons. The fossils show some variety between individuals, which is pretty normal. Zalmoxes lived alongside other cool creatures on Hateg Island, like Telmatosaurus, a small hadrosaur, duck-billed dinosaur that also adapted to island life. This whole area is a treasure trove for paleontologists studying how dinosaurs lived and evolved in isolated environments. So, Zalmoxes gives us a great snapshot of how dinosaurs thrived on islands in Europe during the Late Cretaceous. A little world all its own. Telmatosaurus means marsh lizard, and it was a relatively small hadrosaur that lived during the Late Cretaceous on what's now Hateg Island in Romania. Compared to some of its bigger relatives, it was modest in size, about 5 meters or 16 feet long, and weighing around 600 kilograms or 1,300 pounds. Scientists think it ended up smaller because it lived on an island, where limited resources often lead to animals shrinking over generations, a process called island dwarfism. The discovery story is pretty neat. In 1895, some peasants found a dinosaur skull on an estate in Transylvania and gave it to Ilona Knüppe, whose family owned the land. Her brother, Franz Knüppe, who went on to become a well-known paleontologist, took an interest and started studying dinosaurs. In 1899, he named the dinosaur Limnosaurus transylvanicus, Limnosaurus meaning swamp lizard, reflecting the idea that hadrosaurs hung out in marshy areas, and Transylvanicus pointing to Transylvania. It turned out that name was already used for a different prehistoric reptile, so Franz renamed it Telmatosaurus in 1903, which also means marsh lizard. Later on, another scientist called it Hecatosaurus, but that name didn't stick. The fossils, mainly a skull and jaws, were found in the Hateg Basin's San Petru Formation and are about 68 million years old. Back then, Hateg was an island in the European archipelago, home to a unique mix of dinosaurs and other animals that evolved in isolation. One of the more unusual finds was a juvenile Telmatosaurus with a benign tumor called an ameloblastoma on its lower jaw. This was the first time such a tumor showed up in a dinosaur fossil. Similar tumors have been seen in mammals and reptiles today, so this suggests that these kinds of growths have been around for a very long time. The tumor probably didn't cause much pain early on, but since this young dinosaur didn't make it to adulthood, scientists wonder if the tumor made it weaker and more vulnerable, maybe an easier target for predators. Telmatosaurus was a plant eater, feeding on shrubs, leaves, seeds, and other low-lying plants common to its island environment. Magyarosaurus, meaning Hungarian lizard, was a dwarf sauropod from the Late Cretaceous that lived in what's now Romania's Hateg Island. Unlike the massive sauropods most people imagine, Magyarosaurus was tiny, under 3 meters, about 10 feet long, and weighing less than 1,000 kilograms, around 2,200 pounds. The only known species is Magyarosaurus dacus, a member of the titanosaur family Saltasauridae, closely related to Rapatosaurus. Fossils from at least 10 individuals have been found in the Hunedoara region since the late 1800s. Originally named Titanosaurus dacus by Baron Franz Nopska in 1915, it was reclassified as Magyarosaurus by Friedrich von Huene in 1932. Though Huene added 2 more species, later research confirmed only one Magyarosaurus dacus is valid. Most fossils are tail bones and other skeletal pieces, no skull so far, but a few fossilized eggs likely belong to Magyarosaurus have been discovered near Sebes. Hateg Island was part of the European archipelago, and its isolated environment led to island dwarfism, a trend seen in other local dinosaurs like Raptor and Struthiosaurus. Nopska first proposed this idea, and later studies of bone growth confirmed these were adult dwarves, not juveniles. Magyarosaurus also had dermal armor, small bony plates in its skin. One osteoderm found near San Petru supports this, showing it shared this trait with other armored titanosaurs. One damaged tailbone matched Magyarosaurus so closely that it's considered strong evidence, especially since no other sauropods are known from the area. The Hateg Basin was a nesting ground for dinosaurs like Magyarosaurus. Some fossil eggs even contain embryos showing traces of dermal armor. These fossils came from a time when the region was shifting from a subhumid climate to a sprawling wetland. Paludititan was a titanosaurian sauropod dinosaur that roamed the Late Cretaceous island ecosystem known as Hateg Island, located in what is now Romania. This fascinating creature was discovered in 2002 by a Belgian-Romanian expedition along the riverbed of Râul Mare, near the village of Nalatvat. At the time, it was the most complete sauropod skeleton ever found in Romania, providing an incredible window into island dinosaur life. The dinosaur was officially named Paludititan nalatsensis in 2010 by paleontologists Zoltán Székely and colleagues. Its name combines Latin and Greek roots. Palus meaning marsh, reflecting its likely wet habitat, and titan referring to its giant sauropod lineage. The species name points directly to the discovery site, Nalatvat. Though the skull was missing, the partial skeleton includes 3 dorsal vertebrae, numerous tailbones, parts of the pelvis, and even 2 toe claws. These bones, found close together, clearly belong to a single individual. Paludititan wasn't a massive giant like some of its distant relatives. Measuring about 6 meters or 20 feet long and weighing roughly 1 metric ton, but despite its smaller size, it was far from ordinary. What makes Paludititan special are subtle but telling details in its bones. For example, its back vertebrae have unique bony ridges that curve in an unusual way, unlike those of other titanosaurs. The tail vertebrae feature short, upright neural spines with sharp front corners. The pelvis is marked by a distinctive triangular process that acts like a brace between 2 pelvic bones. These features confirm a Paludititan as a distinct species. Scientists initially wondered if Paludititan was just another specimen of a dwarf titanosaur Magyarosaurus, which shared the same island, but differences in the bones and separate discovery sites led to the conclusion that it deserved its own name. Paludititan offers a unique glimpse into island life during the Cretaceous, a smaller sauropod thriving in an isolated, diverse ecosystem that pushed dinosaurs to evolve in fascinating ways.